Have you ever wondered how one single event can just set off a massive chain reaction across the entire globe? Well, we're about to dive into a truly fascinating and, honestly, a pretty cautionary tale from history. It's a story of economic and political dominoes that started falling right after the First World War. So let's start with this big question right here. How can a peace treaty, something that's literally designed to end a war, actually end up paving the way for an even bigger, more destructive one? I know, it sounds completely backward, but the answer is buried in those really fragile years right after World War I. Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in the early 1920s. The Great War is over, but what's left behind is this incredibly unstable peace. And it's all built on a global economy that is just teetering on the edge. And here's where it gets complicated. You've got two massive economic earthquakes happening at pretty much the same time. Over in the United States, they're getting slammed with a really sharp recession. We're talking severe deflation, jobs vanishing left and right. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic in Europe, they're dealing with the fallout from the Versailles Treaty, which is putting this insane economic pressure on Germany. It was truly a perfect storm for global instability. So let's zoom in on Germany for a minute, because this is really the first major domino that starts to look really wobbly. The country got saddled with this just crushing debt from war reparations, and it sent their entire economy into a complete and total tailspin. Just look at that number, $31.5 billion. To put that in perspective, in today's money, that's well over $500 billion. At the time, pretty much everyone agreed it was an impossible sum. There was just no way the country could ever hope to pay it back. So what do you do when you're facing an impossible debt? Well, Germany's answer was to just print more money, a lot more money. And that led to this catastrophic thing called hyperinflation. It's a simple concept, really. Your money loses its value so fast that it becomes basically worthless paper. Imagine your life savings being wiped out in a matter of weeks or even days. And just look at how fast this all happened. This timeline is it's mind-boggling. In the middle of 1922, it took 320 German marks to get $1. Just a few months later, over 7,000. And by November of the next year, $1 was worth 4.2 times trillion marks. People were literally using wheelbarrows full of cash to go buy a loaf of bread. The economy wasn't just in trouble, it was completely, utterly broken. Now, you might be thinking, wow, that's terrible for Germany. But this wasn't just a German problem. Oh no, this economic sickness was about to go viral. It was a global contagion, and it connected all of these crises across continents. Let's just walk through this chaotic decade. First, you have that US recession in 1920. Then, for a minute, it looks like things might get better. In 1924, you get the Dawes Plan, where US banks loan money to Germany to try and stabilize things. And it kind of worked for a little while. But then in 1929, the big one hits, the US stock market crash. And that's what kicks off the Great Depression for the whole world. Yeah, that Dawes Plan, it was really just a Band-Aid on a massive, gaping wound. A temporary fix had absolutely no chance against the global economic tsunami that was about to hit. When those US banks started failing, the loans that were propping up Germany just vanished overnight, and the crisis got 10 times worse. You know, it's easy to talk about all these big, abstract economic forces, but we have to remember this had a real, devastating human cost. For the people of Germany, this wasn't just some crisis they read about in the paper. It was a daily, grinding struggle just to survive. By 1932, an estimated 5.6 million people in Germany were out of work. And that's not just a statistic, right? That's 5.6 million families with no income, with dwindling hope, and with a growing sense of pure desperation. This chart just drives the point home. The unemployment rate shot up to nearly 31%. Think about that for a second. Almost 1 out of every 3 people in the entire workforce had no job. An entire generation felt completely abandoned by the system. So what happens when an entire society is this desperate? Well, that's when things get political, and they get political fast. When people feel like they have nothing left to lose, they start looking for strong leaders who promise a way out, any way out. And that's exactly what happened. And this is just wild. 2 huge, history-altering political shifts happened in the exact same year, 1933. In the United States, voters turned to Franklin D. Roosevelt and his promise of a New Deal. And at the very same time, in Germany, citizens turned to Adolf Hitler, who also promised national restoration and a way out of the economic chaos. In Germany, this new leadership led to a rapid and, frankly, terrifying new direction for the country. Power was quickly consolidated under one party, the horrific final solution was proposed, and the nation's entire economy was refocused on one thing: aggressively building up its military. All the pieces were now in place for the next conflict. And that brings us all the way back to a profound and pretty timeless question. When a society is fundamentally broken, when the economic systems fail and people lose all hope, who do we as a people trust to fix it? Because as we've just seen, the answer to that question can literally change the course of human history.